Hey guys, welcome back to We Met at Acme. I am so excited about this solo episode today, but I have to tell you, Mercury retrograde is fucking me up. I know that it's fucking you guys up too. I did like a question answer thing, a little question box for how it's been going for you guys, and it turns out not so well either. So, it's not just me. I'm glad we can all commiserate. I just don't understand why this one's so bad. Maybe because it's in Leo, whatever that means, but it is so bad. My son was sick. He's still kind of sick. We didn't sleep for 3 nights. I mean, that was a disaster. I was 40 minutes late to a podcast recording. Do you know how mortifying that is? I've been doing this for 7 years and I was 40 minutes late because I went to the wrong podcast studio. It's actually for an episode that's coming out with Zach Clark, and thank God he's such a nice guy. But I went to the wrong podcast studio because where I record opened another studio in Midtown, and I had booked it in Midtown. So I went here, and there were 2 people, like, the 2 rooms were booked, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what are these people doing in there? Like, I record, like, I took this time. This is my reservation. Why are they in there? And I even so much as walked in to one of the rooms because I was like, I don't know, maybe they don't know that like their time's up. And I walked in on Amanda from Not Skinny But Not Fat recording. I literally had to apologize to her later. It was then that I realized that I was at the wrong fucking studio. I had to run up to Midtown. Midtown from Canal Street is not a small feat. And it's like deep west Midtown, like Times Square almost. It was really awful. I felt terrible. And then ever since then, it's just been like thing after thing. Like I'm late, like my stomach has been bad. Like I don't understand. It's so many things. Then I was doing a virtual recording and this guy is awesome and I'm excited for you to hear this episode eventually, but we are recording, we're 30 minutes in. He's told me his story. He's written a book about love and what makes an everlasting relationship. All of a sudden, I realized the Zoom isn't recording. So, that's been my few weeks so far. Not great. Not great at all. But you know what? Soon it will be over. August 28th, Mercury's going direct. We're getting back into it. We'll have a little last enjoyment of the summer. And there's been some good things too. Some things I can't share just yet because they're not my news to share, but they've been really good too. So, you know what? It all balances out. But I just wanted you to know that if you're going through some retrograde stuff, you are not alone. Anyway, this episode was very important to me to do because we did this poll question. And I'm going to pull this up for you because this was really interesting to me. And this is kind of what sparked everything. So I put up this poll, and the poll said, should you be transparent? Someone submitted it. Should you be transparent or sugarcoat it and keep things positive in a new talking stage? For example, if you had a bad day. And it was a 50-50 down the line, be transparent or sugarcoat. And someone responded and they were like, you need to do an episode on this. Like, this is such a big deal and it needs to be discussed. So here we are discussing this. I think it's so important. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything else that people had responded about that specific poll. Okay. So I just feel like it's so important because it's like such a thing, the talking stage. And it's like, can you mess it up? Or if it's the right person, it'll always work out, right? That's what people say. They say you can't mess things up with the right person. Well, guess what? I'm here to tell you that that is wrong. You can mess things up with the right person. And I actually think the attitude of you can't mess things up with the right person is toxic. And I'll tell you why. And I'm so excited to tell you why. Because that is the same energy as if they don't love me at my worst, they don't deserve me at my best. Well, why are you at your worst with them, right? Like, why are you being so awful to them? This isn't a test, right? Like, these are human beings. And I just don't love the "if they don't love me at my worst, they don't deserve me at my best" quote, because some of our worsts are pretty rough, pretty rough. And listen, if you're in a long distance if you're in a long-term relationship and you're using this quote, like, if they don't love me at my worst, they don't deserve me at my best, meaning like you're going through something mentally, or you, God forbid, just lost a parent or something, and they're not loving you, then like totally, we're all on the same boat here. But in the beginning, they don't love you. You're getting to know each other. You're just starting to open up to one another. The worst thing that you can do is dump all your shit onto this person. And I just hate when people are like, but if it's meant to be, like, it will be fine. And I spelled Diet Coke on myself. But you know what? That's okay. Because I love Diet Coke. So, Diet Coke, if you're listening, shout out to you. Oh my God, it's pretty obvious. Whatever. What can you do? Anyway, so I just think it's toxic. I think that this whole episode is going to be showing you that you can mess things up with the right person. I'll tell you how you can, and I'll tell you how you don't. And then we'll talk about the opposite of like trauma dumping, which is not revealing enough in the beginning, because you do have to reveal some stuff. You do have to be vulnerable in order to connect with someone. But it's like, where does that line, where is that line? So we're going to talk about all of that. And I'm going to get all these liquids away from me. So the first way that you can mess things up and ruin things in early dating is by revealing too much. As I said, trauma dumping. And that poll question is a perfect example. Like, you've had a bad day. You're just in the talking stage with someone. Let's say you went on one date and they're like, how's your day going? They don't care about you yet. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but men especially, they need to spend a lot of time with us to start truly developing like a connection to us and an attachment to us. And so, whereas like maybe a woman would react better to that, I actually don't think I would. I'd be like, "Ugh, he's having a bad day. Like, I don't even care. I don't even know him." But I just don't think that you need to tell said new person that you're having a bad day. There are so many existing people in your life that information can go to. Your sibling, your best friend, your mom, whatever it is. The new person who you went on one date with does not need your negativity. And in fact, it's a huge turnoff to them, probably. So revealing too much too soon can really do it. And another example of revealing too much too soon is like, so I was dating this guy once, and he was someone I met off a dating app. Really nice guy. And I was super into him. And I think it was on our second date, maybe our third date, he told me that he had recently lost his dad. And it actually made me so sad to hear. And I was pretty, upset for him. And I liked him. And I'm not saying, by the way, that him telling me this made me not like him anymore. Of course not, right? Like, if anything, it made him human. But when it came to a time where I was deciding if I wanted to move forward or not, the thought that came into my head, which is so crazy, was, oh, well, I can't be honest with him about how I feel, and I can't end things with him because his dad recently died. And that's where things get complicated, because you're like not even continuing or discontinuing with them for the right reasons, because you know too much and you don't want to like hurt their feelings, but you don't know them enough to actually care for them during this loss. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a really hard thing. So it's not like if the other person can't hold space for your trauma, they're not a good person. It's just that they're not the person to put that on at the time. They're just not. And they will be eventually, especially if they are your person. But you can mess up by doing that too early on. You just can. And it's like and this episode is gonna relate a lot to the dating rules, but it's like when you spend too long on a first date with someone, like you're spending 6 hours together, you spend a whole night together, you spend the next day together. Obviously, there are exceptions, for example, Vivian, came on like Your Rich BFF, she came on my podcast, she talked about how her and her boyfriend had a marathon date, Sophie Ross came on my podcast, her and her boyfriend had a marathon date, like, now they're both married. Of course, there are exceptions, people, but the rule is that if you spend too much time with someone on a first date, you create too much of a false sense of closeness to them when you're not actually close, and then it leads you to revealing so much about yourself where this person doesn't have the capacity to handle it yet. That's just the facts. So revealing too much will do it. This is the most obvious one, but sleeping together too soon will do it, of course. And that's not because they think you're a slut. Absolutely not. Sex positivity only, right? It's because there's like nothing left to look forward to, honestly. And I'll tell you, I went out with a guy. He was actually my cousin's friend, and I actually want him to come on the podcast because he's a cool, awesome dude. He's my cousin's friend, and this is back when I was drinking. We went to like a sangria bar, if that's a thing. I think it's a thing. And I got too drunk. I ended up going back to his place and we had sex. And like, of course, it was consensual and whatever. I just happened to be a little drunk, whatever. Nice guy. It was my choice, whatever. Anyway, after we had sex, I was so over him. And this is a rare thing for women, but it happens too. I was just like, okay, like now I know like what that would be like, and I don't know him, and so there was nothing drawing me to stay. So that can definitely do it. And even if you don't have sex, I think like seeing their home, something really, close to them, like their home, their apartment, having a sleepover too soon, that is behavior that, again, I think can ruin it because at the end of the day, men have like bigger egos than us when it comes to dating. And they very easily and very quickly think that we're obsessed with them. And that's why I'm so anti giving head early on, which is so controversial. And everyone's like, oh my God, you're the worst. And, whenever TikTok guys like see that, they're like, good luck to her husband, whatever. But the reason I'm anti it is because men are more quick to be like, yo, dude, she's obsessed with me. Like I've heard that so many times from my husband's friends. I never, like not once, unless it's someone like, very obviously annoying to a girl. I never hear a woman say, girl, like, guys, he's obsessed with me. He's obsessed with me. I rarely ever hear that. But a guy very quickly will go to that mindset of like, dude, like she gave me, like she's in love with me, And so I think an act of, giving head early on, which is like, honestly, like martyrdom, in my opinion. Like it's a really selfless act. And it's something that I think, reserve for someone that you love. When you do it early on, they think that you're obsessed with them. So I think intimacy and sleepovers too soon, not a good idea. Not a good idea. This is the biggest one that came up when we were having this discussion. Getting sloppy too soon. And I mean alcohol. I can't explain to you how bad alcohol can fuck things up early on. And I'm telling you this because I've dated sober and I've dated drunk before. And also, I just want to make it very clear that I'm not sitting here on a high horse being like, you're all fucking up your dating lives. Like, I have made every mistake that we are talking about right here. Literally every single mistake. I just so happened to not really fuck it up with Steven, my husband, but I made all of these mistakes at one point. So I am telling you firsthand, these did not go over well for me either. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Getting sloppy, I'll tell you every tale if you want to hear it. I used to get sloppy on dates for sure. I and I've had dates where the other guy got like the person got sloppy and it's an immediate turnoff. And the reason is because most people, and some people are like enhanced drunk and that's so nice. And some people are more like have less of a filter drunk, which was more of my situation. And when I had less of a filter, I would say things like, "Are you seeing other people?" And like just like insecure weirdness would come out and that would push guys away. But then on the other hand of it, I think just any sort of slurring or sloppiness as a woman who dated men, when men would get sloppy, it would be such a turnoff to me because I'm like, you can't hold your liquor. And maybe it's because my dad is like the kind of guy that I grew up with, knowing like, men drinking, and he could have like 3 bottles of wine and still like a straight conversation. Not that that's something to brag about, but that's just what I grew up with. So for a guy to like immediately get slop, I'm like, "Ooh, that's such an ick. That's such a turn off." And I imagine guys feel similarly for women. Like no one wants to be on a date with someone who's sloppy. It's also embarrassing. And like, what are they gonna do? Like, no, she's good. She doesn't need another drink. It's like, it's weird. And actually, someone submitted this, and I think this is so important. This person said that she was trying to keep up with his drinking on a date, which she feels pushed him away because like she doesn't normally drink that much. And I'm so glad someone said that because it's so true. And I wrote about this on my Substack, which if you're not subscribed to, you need to, because it's so important. This post that I had written about the pushback and how the pushback is gone. There's no pushback anymore when it comes to women dating men, especially when we're a little older, because like we're thinking about timelines and we're like, oh, I can look past that and I can look past this. And it's actually a way bigger turn on if you do push back. So, for example, in this situation with this woman dating this man, she was trying to keep up with his drinks. Let's say he was like, oh, I'll have a third martini or whatever. And she was like, yeah, me too. It's actually way hotter to the man if she's like, yeah, no, two, and I'm good. I cannot. Like, you do you, but I cannot go. Because then he's like, wow, she knows her limits. She knows her boundaries. She's a woman of, knowledge of herself. And she's not just trying to like please me. Because I know it's hard, right? We think that like we want the guy to think that we are trying to please them. But it's actually not true. They're pleased by the fact that we're being authentically ourselves, right? And I know you're like, oh, that's so ironic, Lindsay, because you're sitting here and you're telling me not to be authentically myself. Not true. I am not saying don't be authentically yourself. I'm not saying don't be yourself. I'm saying be the best version of yourself. Let them get to know the best version of yourself. That doesn't mean you're duping them. That doesn't mean that you're being someone that you're not. You're just being your best someone, your best self. And it's okay to let them fall in love with your best self because once they do and once they're hooked and once they're attached, guess what? No one's perfect. And that's what everyone knows, right? Everyone knows that after the I love you, a fart is coming soon. Like everyone knows that you're going to see their flaws. That's just like the honeymoon stage ends and the flaws come out. But to do that in the beginning when there's no attachment to you is what screws you over. Another thing on the drinking topic, someone said drunk texting. We've all done it. We've all drunk texted, and it's bad for so many reasons. It's bad. The first reason is because they know you like them. You drunk texting someone is basically you revealing your feelings too soon because you are basically saying, I had a little bit of something in my system and I immediately thought of you. Even if you're drunk rage texting them because you're mad, that's still the first thought. When I got a drunk text from someone, when you sent a drunk text from someone, it's the same. I'm like, they're into me. They can't even control it. They can't even control how into me they are, right? No one's getting a drunk text and not being smug about it. No one's getting a drunk text and being like, "Oh my god, like someone must have taken their phone. Like they don't like me that much." Or you know what I'm saying? Like that you are revealing yourself. You are coming clean with your feelings when you drunk text. So if you're not ready to come clean with your feelings, then you shouldn't come clean with your feelings too soon. And again, that's not being authentic. That's just, you know, waiting to get to know them before you decide that you've put them on a pedestal and that they're your husband or wife. So, yeah, the drunk texting is bad. Asking what are we too soon? This one came up a lot, and it's a real problem because it's a turnoff. I don't know anyone who has ever been asked, "What are we?" and been like, "I'm so happy you said that because I want to tell you that we are boyfriend and girlfriend." It never works out in your favor. There's always better ways to ask it. So asking what are we? And then this is a so there's okay, oh my God, there's so many. Leaning on them in a family emergency too soon. And I know what you're thinking, right? Like this should be what connects us. And sometimes it can be, right? Like if God forbid, I'm just going to use the parent example. God forbid, once you've started seeing them, something terrible happens to your parent and they show up for you in this like beautiful way and it bonds you closer and you know, you're just unbreakable from them. Then that is amazing. And that's out of a rom-com. It's not realistic though, unfortunately. I'm not saying to like, if God forbid a parent dies, I'm not saying to be like, yeah, like it just whatever, obviously like be upset and whatever, show that you're upset, take time, whatever you need to do, but don't expect someone that you just started dating to be your rock, your anchor, your confidant during a hard time with your family. Unless you're over the hump, right? But we're not talking about once you're official. We're talking about early stages. I'm talking like dates 1 to 4, right? It's too soon. Even dates 1 to 6. Because after 6, I truly feel like if this is the one for you, he is hooked. He is hooked. And that's why I say it's okay to sleep with them after 6. But he's hooked by then. So, if you've been on 6 dates and you have a family emergency, then that's actually a good time to see if this is somebody that, is going to show up for you or not. But you don't ask anything of them. You kind of just give them the deal of what's going on and you observe how they react to it. You don't try to get them to do anything a certain way at that point because you're really in this observation stage where you're seeing if this person on their own accord is going to act the way that you'd ideally want someone to act in that situation. So, yeah, I mean, asking for too much, it's kind of the same thing. You don't need to ask for too much too soon. And I think that if you have to ask for more, we're probably going to have to put the nail in that coffin. Introducing family too soon. I always get these messages, these DMs that are like, my sister's coming to town. Like, it's casual. We're going to be at a bar. Like, should I have the guy come? No, honestly, no. Because if anything, it can, like, the worst thing that can happen is it can create a false, like a sense of closeness or like it's just too soon. It's too soon. The family should not be involved in person. Like if your sister FaceTimes you and you're next to a guy that you've been dating, like that's different. You shouldn't be introducing them to your family in person, even on FaceTime, honestly, until you're very close to official. Like you're going to be official with this person. I made that mistake time and time again. And I've had that mistake made to me. I was dating a guy in college and college is different because it's not like 2 dates. It's like, 2 weeks of, hooking up and sleeping in each other's dorm rooms or like apartment complexes. And I went to LA with friends, and he was from LA, and he invited me to, um, not Lakers, what's the other LA, well, no, the LA basketball. You know what I'm talking about. There's the Lakers and the whatever, and the Clippers. He invited me to a Clippers game. We go to the Clippers game, and I think it's just the two of us. And we had literally been hooking up for 2 weeks. I think it's just the two of us, and we get to our seats, and I'm not even kidding you, his parents are the two other seats next to us. And it was kind of like an ambush, and it was really confusing, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, like, these are, like, my family seats, like, and my parents are here." And I was like, "Oh, shit." And then, of course, like, I had to, put on my best foot forward and talk to his parents the whole time, and his parents were lovely, and there's nothing against his family, right? His parents could have been the coolest people in the world, and it didn't matter because I was like, "This is too much too soon." And I remember we got back to school, and he actually did the "What are we?" And in that moment, the second those words left his mouth, I was like, "Nothing. We are nothing." And I was so running so far in the opposite direction. I think that just goes to show, like, when you put pressure on something that early on, like, the person's gonna run the other way because it really does has to have to happen naturally. And if he had not done the parents thing, if he had waited, like, played it a little more cool, I honestly do think it could have worked out. Like, he was an awesome dude, but, like, that stuff just started to give me the ick, and then, like, I couldn't get over it. So, I mean, that's just another example of, like, you really can ruin things early on. You really can, even if you think you can't. With Steven, I didn't introduce my family until, like, the very last second, and this was more protecting myself because I was like, "I don't want it to not work out with him," and then, like, I've told my family, and then they were like, "Oh, that guy would have been so great for you." So it's like, whatever reason, it doesn't matter. Your family doesn't have to be involved until you know for sure because you trust yourself, right? Like, you know what your family who your family's gonna like, you know who your siblings are gonna like. You don't need to take it that far with someone in terms of introducing them to your family and siblings until you're sure about that person because it's about you. You're spending the rest of your life with them. Your mom isn't, your dad isn't, your sister isn't, your brother isn't. And so really, like, let that relationship stay close to your heart until you introduce them to your parents. Because what's the worst that could happen? It goes horribly and you break up. Okay. You didn't commit to them, you didn't move in with them, you didn't get engaged to them, you know? Okay, so this person said something really interesting. So to remind you, the question was like, what did you do that ruined something early on? And this person said, I gave a bad and untrue answer to the 5-year plan question that didn't reflect my personality. I love this because this is a person vulnerably saying, I was trying to get him to like me. I wasn't worrying about if I liked him and who I really was. And this is where it gets complicated with the vulnerability thing. It's like, this is a moment to not only lean into your vulnerability, but to lean into who you are. And this person got overwhelmed with something in their head about what they thought this person would be interested in hearing. And this goes back to my Substack about what happened to the pushback. This man, like, is not sitting here hoping that you're going to say the exact 5-year plan that they want. If anything, how cool is it if you're like, yeah, my 5-year plan's like I might move to LA, I want to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs and like that's my vibe. Like, they will be blown away. Holy shit. They don't just like want to do what they think I want them to do in my head. And my mom actually did this on the first date with my dad, or like one of the first dates with my dad. He said something like, I'm looking for, because his mom worked and she was, really successful and she was like the breadwinner in their family. And he said something like, I'm looking for like a working woman. Like, I want a mom who works, or like I want a wife who works and like power couple, whatever it is. And my mom had come from a mom who worked too and wasn't around that much to, be around for the kids. And she didn't want that. She actually really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. So she immediately was like, "Well, then it's not gonna work because I wanna stay at home and I wanna be there for my kids because I grew up with the opposite, and that's what I'm all about. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. That's it for me. Like, so if you want someone who works, like, good luck finding them because it's not here. It's not me." And my dad was like, "Damn, like, she knows what she wants, and that is really cool." Right? And she just not talked back to me, but she just put me in my place. Here I am telling her what kind of woman I want, and she's like, "Well, that's not the woman I am." And I think that made him really intrigued and that made him really interested. And I think it's important to not, obviously you want to put your best foot forward, but you have to be who you fucking are. I remember when Steven and I were first talking in early stages, I was in Florida on a weekend actually solo, and I've talked about this weekend before, but he was actually supposed to come with me, and I had thought I messed things up because I invited him too soon, and he, like, was gonna go, but then he said some work excuse, and I thought it was bullshit, and ultimately I found out it wasn't bullshit, but I was still, like, it's over. Anyway, I was in Miami that weekend, and we were texting, and he was like, "What are you up to?" And I was on a walk. It was like a nice walk, listening to a podcast. It was like a really good walk. But I told him I'd just gone on a run. And it was so unlike me. I never run. In fact, I literally do double floor at Barry's to avoid running. I hate running. I can't breathe when I run. But for some reason, I pegged Steven in my head as someone who runs because I didn't know him back then. And I was like, he probably thinks it's cool if like I'm someone who relaxes by going on a run. I just made that the fuck up. And so I was like, "Oh, yeah, I just went on a run, like, it was a good run, whatever." And he was like, "Cool." Like, what it's not like it turned him on or turned him off, so luckily it was like a minute, like a tiny thing. But we talk about it today, and he's like, "Remember when you lied about going on a run in Miami?" Like, that was the weirdest fucking thing. And I am still embarrassed about it because I wasn't being authentic to myself. If I had been like, "Yeah, I'm just on a walk," like, I can't with these people who run, like, that'll just never be me. Just said something authentic about who I am, it would have probably gone over much better than him being like, "Cool, glad you had a nice run," if that's your thing. But that wasn't my thing. I wasn't being myself, and that's just never a good idea. Another thing that someone did, and this came up a lot, is sending accidental screenshots to the person they're dating. We all either have done this or know someone who has done this and been a recipient of the text being like, "Holy shit." Like the screenshot was supposed to go to us, but it went to the guy or whatever. And we all know that that is the kiss of death for when you're newly seeing someone. If you send them a screenshot accidentally, that is not being revived. There's no revival possible for that situation. They know that you either talking shit about them or like them too much because you're like, "Look what they said, they're so cute." But either way, that person's about to have the ick so hard. There is almost no recovering from that. I think that I feel like there was something my friends and I came up with to try to recover from that once. Um, oh, yes, right. And this is funny because you can kind of do this when Mercury's retrograde because technology's all messed up. So you send them the screenshot of your conversation with them accidentally, and you say something like, "Is this what our conversation looks like to you? Like, my phone is spazzing, and I just want to make sure that, like, you didn't say something I missed that didn't go through." Like, it has to be something like that. Or you're like, yeah, I don't know. And that's literally the only way to recover from that. I guess you could be like, "Sorry, I was sending this to a friend because," yeah, no, there's no way to recover from that. I'm so sorry. Okay. Then on the other hand, this is a really interesting example that someone wrote. She said, I sent a this is how she thinks she ruined it with someone. She said, I sent a psycho text because he didn't ask if I got home safe after a 1 hour drive home. So she thinks she ruined it because she sent that psycho text. I'll tell you right now, that is so messed up that he didn't text you after a 1 hour drive home. You might have quote unquote ruined it. Why would we want to be with someone who didn't text us after a 1 hour drive home after a date to make sure that we got home safe? You know what I'm saying? Like that person wouldn't have been right for us anyway. And I actually feel like she's justified in sending that text. If I were sending that text, I would be like, I don't give a shit what happens with this guy because he didn't treat me right. Like she knew in her heart that that wasn't the right treatment and she spoke up for it. So if you're listening to this, you did the right thing. And then on the other hand of, not trauma dumping, I think not going deep in the at all is also not good. Like for example, I was dating this guy when I was younger and I was like much more insecure. I would think it was like 23, 21, whatever it was, and I had barely had a job. I think I was like, production assistant on the set of a TV show or like a temp or some job that I wasn't proud of. And I was dating this guy who had a sick job. He was like in the music business, pretty high up, had discovered an amazingly cool band. And I was intimidated by what he did. And we went out on a date and we went out on a few dates and I never asked him about work because I was so insecure about what I did that I never asked him because I thought in my head for some reason that like if I never ask him about what he does for work, then like he doesn't think that I'm like here because I'm so impressed by what he does for work. I don't know, it was really weird. But ultimately we didn't end up working out in the end. And we, you know, like saw each other years later. We were running in the same circles. And I think I said to him what happened back then? Or maybe he said it to me and he was like, "Yeah, I just thought it was so weird that like you didn't care at all about what I did for work." And it's such a silly example, but it just goes to show like don't be afraid, don't be insecure to ask about things, Like the coolest thing that you could do is ask them be interested in your date. And I regretted that. And, to this day, he's not someone that I should have or could have ended up with for whatever reason. We're just very different now. But I thought it was so weird of me that I didn't do that. And I just thought it was so uncool. And I think that like especially if you're dating someone who's doing something cooler than you are, like praise that. Don't be like, "Oh, everyone else does, so I'm not going to. I'm going to be the different one." Like, no. That's really cool, Don't like neg someone. And so that was an important lesson for me to learn and I think just, and we'll end with the vulnerability thing, like vulnerability is the way to connect when you're on a date with someone. And there's a way to be vulnerable slowly without dumping everything at once. And I always talk about the 36 questions that lead to love. I've mentioned many times that Steven and I did them on the second date. And, some of the questions are like, when was the last time you cried? And things like that, which I think in the context of asking these questions back and forth is okay. It's very different than coming in to your second date, sitting down and be like, my boss just made me cry. And here's why, It's a very different energy and it's a very intentional vulnerability as opposed to like here's my problem, you deal with it, even though you don't know me, even though you don't care about me, even though you have nothing else to keep you coming back to me. And I think that if we let someone get to know us, because we're all amazing, we're all unique, no two of us are the same. If we let someone get to know us for who we truly authentically are and the weirdness about us and all of that stuff, I mean, not the too much weirdness, but you know what I'm saying? Like who we are, our likes or dislikes, our genuine likes or dislikes, like I hate running, whatever it is, we start to paint the real picture of who we are. then if they fall for you, they are truly falling for you, your likes and your dislikes, and your, idiosyncrasies and whatnot. And then if you have a problem, you have someone that is there to be there for you, to catch you when you fall and to have your back because they are like, I know this person and I love so much about this person. If they're having a bad day, they're not the kind of person that is gonna just vent to vent. They're not the kind of person that's just a negative, like, time suck or whatever it's called, like energy suck. They are having a bad day, and this is someone that I've now grown to know and whatever. So I'm gonna lift them back up and continue on. But they don't know yet, right? If you do it too soon, they don't know yet who you are. They don't know that this isn't drama. They don't know that this isn't the norm. If you do it too soon, they could be scared off. They could be like, I don't want this kind of person who's coming in complaining about her job, right? Whereas, like, if they actually know you, also, I think there's something really sexy about them discovering that you did go through something when you were early dating that you didn't share with them. I think it's so, so sexy to be like, "Oh, damn, like, why didn't you tell me?" Like, I would have been that let them say that, let them be like, I had no idea that, you had this big meeting last Monday and you had to fire someone." Like, that's really hard to go through. Like, how did you feel? Because at least then you're a week later into it. They think they know you a week better, right? And so I think the I'll end with, yes, you can still mess it up, but there's such easy ways to not. And it's being your authentic self, slowly opening up and being vulnerable with this person and not and like obviously, following the dating rules, of course. So, I hope that this was helpful. I hope that, we haven't done a solo episode on dating and being single and that kind of stuff. So, let me know, shoot me a DM. Let me know if this is something that you resonated with. And if you have any more thoughts on this topic, I would love to hear them. If you enjoyed the episode, feel free to write a review, send it to a friend, rate the show. And as always, thank you for listening.